We're in the month of Sivan. We have the week of Shavuos, the receiving of the Torah. So this Shabbos in Chutz La'aretz, outside of Israel, there is no Pash of the week. We read second day Yom Tov laning. In Israel, there is a Pash of the week because Yom Tov is only on Friday. So given that this is a Pasha Shir, we're just going to end the Shir right now because there's no Pasha. Or we can discuss Shavuot. So last week we discussed the book of Ruth, and how it impacts on the characters. Who are the characters in it? I thought of continuing that. We might. We'll see how we go. But I think let's just take a little bit of time to discuss some things about Shavuot. What I want to discuss is, what is it? When was it? Something to do with the timing. And then hopefully discuss what we were given at Sinai, Mount Sinai. What were we actually given? What was the whole process? So to start with, we were given the Torah. And so from a shir from Rabbi Moshe Meyer Weiss, which I heard last week on last week's Parsha, I just want to pick a few things that he said, because I think it's a phenomenal introduction to receiving the Torah, because all of us receive the Torah on Shavuot. At the end of the day, we're going to get to receiving the Torah. Before we started last week talking about Donald Trump's Shabbos project. Well, let's call it that. I just very quickly did see something interesting. It's America's 250th birthday. It was Rabbi Shimon Kamenetsky. It wasn't Rabbi Shmuel Kamenetsky. It was some Rabbi Kamenetsky worked out Shabbos' date was Chof Tes Iyar, the 29th of the month of Iyar. The gematria of 29th of Iyar, the Hebrew letters, is 250. Just as an intro, yes. Now,
in God we trust.
Correct, in God we trust. Not in America and not in Donald. Ein od milvado. There's nothing but Hashem. The whole world. We said before. Rabbi Moshe Meyer Weiss is the one who quoted this from. He says, "Where do you find?" We said at Har Sinai, Na'aseh v'nishma, we will do, and then we'll listen. Backwards. Where do we find that in Sefer Shmos, in the book of Exodus, chapter 24, verse 7. 24:7. Chapter and verses were not written in the Torah. They were not written by a Jewish person. They were written by a Christian priest when the Bible was being printed in the printing press. That's where it all came from. And it put in there 24/7. There's nothing to do with us, but it works. Because Ein od milvado. Hashem wanted us to know in year 2026, Torah is 24/7. We understand that 30, 40 years ago, that phrase didn't exist. There was no such, new people knew about something like that. But it just ties in, and what Hashem does is He puts things into people's heads that they can expound Torah, that there's always new things coming out of Torah. So what last week's Parsha started by Adav Hashem and Moshe b'midbar Sinai. Hashem spoke to Moshe in the desert of Sinai. Chidah says the gematria, once you're talking gematrias, of the words b'midbar Sinai is 378, which is the exact same gematria as the word b'shalom, peace, in peace. Living in peace is what Torah is about. When we live in peace, then we're at peace, and when we're not in peace, then we know what happens. In fact, I heard in a share last week, Megillas Ruth starts Vayhi b'mei hashvotim. It was in the time of the judges. And in the same verse it says Vayhi again. Whenever in Tanakh the word Vayhi comes along, it said it's something negative is coming, something bad's going to happen. And what bad happened? Oh, there was a famine. But why do we need a second Vayhi? This is from Rabbi Yitzhak Sorotskin. He said, because, quoting a whole lot of sources, because the second Vayhi was hidden. What was missing at the time of the introductory passages of the time of Ruth? Why was there a famine? Because they were not learning Torah the way they should be. There was not enough Torah learning. And in fact, most times in history where there have been a famine, we can trace it back and say, there was no Torah. The level of Torah learning at each person's level was not where it should be. People were not doing what they were supposed to be. Hashem sends a famine to the world. We can say a little bit different because we're talking about Shalom. We just need to look at October 6th and the lack of Shalom in the Jewish people. We know the temple was destroyed because we were not at peace, because we hated each other internally, whatever that means. And the temple has not been rebuilt because of that same reason. And so we need to be b'shalom. And how do we become b'shalom? Through giving of the Torah, through learning Torah, through accepting Torah, saying that everything comes from Hashem. We say Hashem looked into the Torah and created the world. It doesn't work the other way. Hashem didn't create the world and then wrote the Torah. He had the Torah. He put himself, his name is the Torah. The whole Torah is a book of Hashem's names. How that works, we don't understand. How do we say, oh, there was the story, we'll discuss the story of the golden calf. Is that written in the Torah? Yes, it is. But it was written after the fact by Hashem rearranging the way the letters work. Whatever that means, I don't understand. But Hashem is the Torah. Hashem created the Torah, looked into Torah and created a whole world. Therefore, in order for us to understand how the world works, we need to understand what's in the Torah. It gets very complicated, but I'm trying to keep it in my head. I understand it at a very simple level. It says, how good is it and how sweet is it when brothers live together? And when brothers live together, there's only goodness. Goodness only comes from Torah. The other pasuk says, Ki lekach tov nasati lachem, Torah si al tazovu. Torah is a lekach tov. It's a good merchandise. It's a phenomenal thing. It's a lekach tov, and tov is Torah. So when there's tov, there's Torah. Then shevas achim gam yachad, brothers can live together. That's what our goal is. We need to work out all of our differences, and we have huge differences. I was at a meeting last night, and somebody was talking. It was a person who set up a new base midrash. He's a rabbi in the army in Israel. He's been in Miluim for 600 days, and he's got a wife and 7 children. His youngest child was born a few weeks before was called up. Before the past call up now, when the Iran war started. He had a 2-week-old baby, and he went in and was called in. And he's trying to help people with Torah. That's all his job is, just help people get over how can we become better people. And the way we can become better people is by accepting other people and living with Torah. So let's talk about a Yom Tov that's coming up, Shavuos. Shavuos is a Yom Tov that really is take the Matan Torah side out of it. It's just a time to stop. It's an agricultural festival. It happened at the time of the giving of the Torah. It's not in the Torah itself. It's not given as a date. It says count 49 days, and on the 50th day Hashem will give the Torah. There's a dispute in the Gemara. Rabbi Yossi actually says it was given on the next day, on the 7th of Sivan, not on the 6th of Sivan. Moshe delayed for a day. We'll come back to a timeline in a few minutes. But we have in Israel, this Friday in Israel, it's Erev Shabbos. It happens to be summertime and longer days, but they have the most incredibly full day because it's all night learning. It's regular Yom Tov davening with full Hallel. It's laning for Matan Torah, for actually giving the Torah. Before laning, like Ashkenaz, we have a thing called Akdamos. Akdamos is a Aramaic poem in very, very difficult Aramaic. The Kohen gets called to Torah, and before he says his brachas, we go through this acrostic, I call it a poem, that's line by line through the Aleph base in very difficult Aramaic. The Chazan says a line and we say a line. It takes quite a bit of time. Then we have the laning. Then, before that, actually, they have Megillas Rus in many shuls. Then they have laning. Then we have the Haftorah. Then we have Yizkor. And then Musaf. It's a very long davening. We have it split over the 2 days. So Yizkor on the second day makes it a little bit more spread out. But what's Yizkor about? Why on earth are we suddenly saying Yizkor on Yom Tov? Isn't Yom Tov a happy time? Why are we creating sadness? We're not. We're creating a connection. Yizkor is about remembering what's important in life. And what's important is that connection back to our parents, and their parents, all the way back to us standing at Har Sinai receiving the Torah. That's what we remember in Yizkor. The most important part of Yizkor, and I've said this a number of times, is actually you make a pledge when you say Yizkor. Whatever language you say Yizkor in, there's a pledge. I pledge to give money to charity. Make sure you give that money to tzedakah, because that helps with the elevation of the neshama. I believe the best way of helping a neshama with Yizkor is donate books. Donate books to a library, to a place, a base medrash, somewhere where those books are going to be learned, read from, a siddur, a chumash, a gemara, whatever it is. Every time that book is opened, that neshama gets some kind of elevation, some kind of better connection to Hashem. That's really what Yizkor is about. So we've got a lot to do. We've got a lot to cover in just a few minutes. The Reb Elimelech Milezhinsk, great Hasidic Rebbe, says we need to accept the Torah, but we need two conditions to accept the Torah. You have to be like Har Sinai. Torah, a person needs to be humble. You need to battle that thing. You need to make sure that you're not a big shot. I know so much Torah. I always say the more Torah you learn, the realize how little you know. And somebody who knows no Torah thinks they know everything. And the second thing he says is we need to make sure that we are not sad, not depressed. Torah needs to be taken in a state of joy, of happiness, of simcha. It's all about simchas Torah. It's an interesting phenomenon. We got Shavuos now, we're accepting the Torah. But we come along, we're not finishing the Torah now, we're not starting the Torah. That comes along in simchas Torah. In Israel, on Shmini Atzeres and Shavuos is called Atzeres. And Shmini Atzeres is Atzeres. It's the same kind of Yom Tov. There's nothing to the Yom Tov. We're confused out of Israel because we have many people eat in a sukkah still. In Israel, Sukkot finishes on Hoshana Rabbah, and Shmini Atzeres starts that night. It's a totally separate Yom Tov. The Gemara goes to town describing the differences between Sukkot and Shmini Atzeres. Shmini Atzeres is a day unto itself, and so is Shavuos, a day unto itself. It happens to have Matan Torah attached to it. But we need to know, Torah needs to be taken in a state of joy. We can't be sad, we can't be depressed. I'm not going to go through it now, but Rabbi Moshe Meyerwas went through a whole lot of ways to help a person not be sad. He says, Reb Chaim Kanievsky says, interestingly enough, I'll just look at a couple of things here. There is a big thing to have Melava Malka after Shabbos. In many ways, the Melava meal after Shabbos, in many ways, is quote unquote more important than the eating on Shabbos. It's not, but it's a very important meal to eat for many different things. But Reb Chaim Kanievsky said you should have a hot drink. A skula against depression is a hot drink after Shabbos. How that works, why that works, I have got no idea. But that Reb Chaim Kanievsky, who knew more Torah than anybody in our time, if he can say that, then we can believe that. He says wash your hands properly. In the morning we should all wash our hands 3 times on each hand. Very important. Don't know who. That's brought in the name of the Chazon Ish, Reb Chaim Kanievsky's uncle. He says, Rav Avigdor Miller said, the best way to get rid of depression is to exercise. We're talking about a Rosh Shiva who knew his stuff, and he says we need to make sure that we keep our mind and our body active. That's the most important thing in life in order to get rid of depression. So there's lots and lots of different things we can talk about. What I think we should talk about is what was the timeline? We know we left Egypt, we left Mitzrayim on the 15th of Nisan. We're leaving there in a big fanfare. Paro tried to kick us out at midnight, and Hashem said to Moshe, no, you go on your own time, and we left in the morning. We walked out of Egypt. Miraculously, all the Jewish people were gathered together in less than 18 minutes. One of the things with that dough becomes comets, 18 minutes, the physical thing, but that's how quickly the Jewish people were miraculously gathered together. the journey began. And off we're leaving Egypt. 3 days later, Paro decides, hang on, I'm about to lose 600,000 men, about 3 million people, plus a whole lot of other groups of people who left with us, the Erev Rav. This is my whole economy. It's already been devastated by a year of plagues. Now I'm losing all my slaves. I'm going after them. And Paro decides he's chasing after. He catches up. We're stuck between the proverbial rock and hard place. Or the rock on the one side, the Egyptians on the other side, and the sea on the third side. And there's nowhere to go. And Nachshon ben Aminadav walks in, as the Midrash says. And he just walks in until his nose, and then the sea splits. And Hashem opens the sea for us and kills the Egyptians. That was a week after we left. That's the 7th day of Pesach. A few days later, we are through the sea, and the 15th of the month of Iyar, the bread that we took out, the matzah we took out of Egypt with us. Remember, we had a little bag of matzah on our back. That lasted an entire month. From the morning of the 15th of Nisan until the 15th of Iyar. That in itself was man. We need to know, we still today eat man. We have to put in our effort. Their effort was the Korban Pesach, the Bris Milah they had, the various things that they went through the night of Pesach in order to get that. But we suddenly had no more matzah. And Hashem gave us man. And He gave us food. And that man would then last for 40 years. Until we went into the land of Israel. On the just before that we got to Marah. There was no water to drink. It says the waters were bitter. And at that point we were given certain mitzvahs. We were given the mitzvahs of Shavuos and various other mitzvahs. Moshe made the waters sweet. We then get to traveling through the desert, and we get to the 1st of Sivan. The 1st of Sivan, yesterday was the 1st of Sivan. So work out from Pesach till yesterday. It seems like a lifetime. It was only 6 weeks. We get to, 6 weeks and a few days. We get to Midbar Sinai, desert of Sinai, at Mount Sinai. And we are now ready to start accepting the Torah. Hashem is ready to give us the Torah. And Moshe goes up on the 2nd, and Hashem commands him various things, and he comes down. And through the next 5 days, 6 days, Moshe goes up and down, Hashem telling him what to do. Moshe comes down, Hashem tells him what to do. Hashem says, you need to separate from your wives. Everybody is separate. You need to be in a state of complete purity in order to receive the Torah. Separate from your wives for 2 days. Moshe understands that that's actually 3 days. And that's the Machlokas in the Gemara. Moshe added an extra day. So Hashem wanted to give the Torah on the 6th. According to Rabbi Yossi anyway, it was given on the 7th of the month of Sivan. That week was about preparation for the revelation. We come along on the morning of the 6th or the 7th of Sivan. And we knew that prophecy is generally given in a dream state. And so the people slept in. One of the reasons why we learn Torah all night, on Shavuos night, many people have a custom to learn all night, it's become, Tikkun Leil Shavuos is interesting. There is a program called Tikkun Leil Shavuos. You find it in the back of most Yom Tov Machzorim. It goes through every Parsha. It goes through all of Tanakh. Now, it doesn't do the whole Torah. It's a few verses from each Parsha, a few verses from every book of Tanakh, every bit of Gemara, a line or two from Mishnah, from Gemara. It goes through Kol HaTorah Kula, the whole Torah, bits and pieces of it. It's an order that people do. It's more a Sfardi thing than an Ashkenaz thing. Hasidim, Sfardim do it, generally not done in Ashkenaz, but it's a very new phenomenon that every shul has speakers talking and whatever. And I think what's happened in the last less than decade is it's become just a night to gather and discuss something that may or may not be related to Torah. You know, there was a debate about alcohol a few years ago, for example, the merits of drinking or not drinking. Apparently it was very lively, and thank God I wasn't there. It was lively because those people who were supporting it were drinking. I'm making that up. But we've moved in some ways from what this original program was, which was really something that the rabbis in Sfat, the Arizal and the Kabbalists in Sfat were learning on this night, through the night. And they created this whole program, so much so that an angel came down. The Malach of the Mishnah came down and spoke to them through the night. And they said, had there been a million year, the amount of Torah you would have learned would have been significantly more. And they regathered on second night. There are people who learn both nights in Chutz La'aretz. And then the author of the Shulchan Aruch had this Malach come and visit him every Friday night and teach him the depths of Torah, that he wrote a book about this, what the Malach taught him. We're talking now, the Shulchan Aruch is pure halacha, but he was one of the most learned Kabbalists in all time. And so that's really the source of Tikkun Leil, just a few hundred years ago, in the 1500s. And that's become very much a modern thing in our times. That's like every shul has these mega programs. If we just spent a few minutes on the night learning about Torah instead of whatever the draw card topic might be, maybe it'd be a little bit better. But at least people are congregating and discussing something. And so Moshe, on the 7th of Sivan, according to Rabbi Yossi, is then told, he's told before this, but we need to make a separation. The people can't come up the mountain. There needs to be a barrier. There was a barrier set up around the mountain. Nobody was allowed beyond that but Moshe. And Moshe went up. The elders went a certain distance. Aaron went a certain distance. And Moshe went up onto Har Sinai. And every single Jewish person heard Hashem speak. We begged to hear Hashem properly. Hashem wanted to give the Torah through Moshe. We said, no, we want to receive the Torah directly from Hashem. And everybody heard the first of the 10 Commandments. Anochi Hashem Elokecha. I'm Hashem your God. Not I'm Hashem your God who created the universe. I'm Hashem your God who took you out of Egypt, which tells us that Aseres HaDibros, the Torah, is given to the Jewish people, not to the whole world. Christianity has adopted it and adapted it and changed things. But as far as we're concerned, Hashem spoke to the 3 million people standing at the foot of Sinai. The power of that interaction with Hashem speaking directly to us caused our bodies and our souls to separate. Hashem had to do some form of Tchias HaMesim, resurrection of the dead. It says that our souls were thrown, or our bodies were thrown 12 mil, call it 12 kilometers away. But it's in practical terms, it's like, that's how powerful it was that we couldn't handle it. And Hashem revived us. And Hashem said the second of the Aseres HaDibros. And the same thing happened again. And we said to Moshe, we can't cope. And Hashem said to Moshe, fine, the rest of the Torah will be given to you. And the other 8 of the Aseres HaDibros were sold to Moshe. And then he transmitted it to us. We say, Torah Tzivu Lanu Moshe, Morash Akilas Yaakov. The Torah was given to Moshe as an inheritance for the people of Jacob. The word Torah, we're talking Gematria, is a Gematria of 611. Torah Tziva Lanu Moshe. The Torah was given to Moshe. 611 were given to Moshe. The other 2 were given to all of the Jewish people directly. So we received 2 directly, received 611 mitzvahs indirectly. That verse actually is one of the first verses we teach a 3-year-old to say. Shema Yisrael, Torah Tziva Lanu Moshe. We have a song, we sing it when we do various different things. It's a song we teach the kids when they're very, very little. And so then we've now got Aseres HaDibros, and then the next day Moshe goes up to Har Sinai. It says he didn't eat or drink for 40 days. He sat with Hashem in heaven. And the Gemara in Shabbos goes through what happened, what transpired in this 40 days. The angels came to Hashem, and they said, what are you doing giving this Torah to a human being? This is in heaven, the Torah. So Hashem said to Moshe, defend yourself. You receive the Torah. Moshe said, look, I can't. So Hashem said, hold on to my throne. And so Moshe said to the angels, oh, it says in the Aseres HaDibros, honor your father and your mother. I had father and mother. Do you angels have a father and a mother? Don't kill. Angels, are you just like, do you murder? Don't steal. Do you kidnap people? And each of them, he went through all the mitzvahs, and the angel said, okay, the Torah's got to go down to man. The Torah was designed to be given to mankind. Hashem waited 26 generations to give us the Torah. From Adam to Moshe's time was 26 generations. So Moshe goes up, and the people were told he's going to be 40 days. And they're calculating there. The Erev Rav starts stirring up. This same Erev Rav that Hashem said to Moshe, they, your people. And everything the Torah says it's your people. It's something negative that it's not really Hashem's people. It's the people that Moshe said were allowed to come with us. It was on Moshe's head, so to speak. And they started stirring up, oh, Moshe's not coming back. And the angel of death, or the Satan, presented a picture of Moshe in a coffin in heaven to the people, and they stirred and stirred and stirred. And they came to Hur, and Hur pushed them away, and they killed him. And they came to Aaron, and Aaron said, what am I going to do now? And he had a choice. And he said, all right, we'll have a Yom Tov tomorrow to Hashem, bring me your gold. And through the magic that these people knew, they created the golden calf on the 17th of Tammuz. We have the 17th of Tammuz as a fast day for various things that happened in the first temple, mainly first and second temple, beginning of what we call the 3 weeks. How many days is the 3 weeks that we're going to have? Please God, it'll be all Yom Tovim. 22 days. It starts on the same day that it ends. Tisha B'Av is on the same day of the week as 17th of Tammuz. Yeah, that's one of my little riddles. So Moshe comes down carrying the Luchos, and I'll discuss a little bit more about the Luchos once we finish this timeline. Moshe carries the 2 Luchos, and he sees what's going on. He can hear what's going on. Yeshua's waiting for him at the foot of the mountain. Yeshua says, oh, there's a war going on. And Moshe says, no, there's something else. And Moshe realizes, and the Luchos he's holding, the letters just start pulling out of these tablets. And they go back to heaven. And Moshe can't cope holding these things. I'll discuss exactly how much they may have weighed. And he drops them and he smashes. We have a picture of Moshe standing there smashing these things. We have a lot of false pictures about them, we'll come back to. But Moshe drops them and they break. And Moshe says, what's going on here? And the people are dancing, and there is a number of people are killed. About 6,000 people die. Out of 3 million people, it's a small minority, tiny minority of people, but it just shows how a vocal minority can, and in our times we see this so much more, can cause so much destruction. And Moshe then goes back up to Har Sinai the next day for another 40 days. Comes back down on the 1st of Elul, Rosh Chodesh Elul. 17th of Tammuz, 18th of Tammuz till the 30th of Tammuz, he comes back down the next day. And he's up there davening to Hashem, basically. The first 40 days, he's learning the Torah that he's going to teach the Jewish people. The next 40 days, he is davening to Hashem to help the Jewish people. Hashem says, go back down and carve for yourself a new set of luchos. In Moshe's tent, Hashem provided the stone for him to carve. It says it's made of sapphire. We'll use the word sapphire. Whether it's sapphire or not, we're not sure 100%, but let's just use the word sapphire for our purposes. He carves the second luchos, and he goes back up on the 1st of Elul. We start the 1st of Elul today is 40 days before Yom Kippur. And in that period of time, we say, David Hashem Oyer, we want to live in Hashem's tent all the time, David said. We blow shofar. Sfadim start saying slichas for the whole month. And that is a month of preparation for Rosh Hashanah, Seres Yemei Tshuva, and Yom Kippur. Moshe comes down on Yom Kippur, on the 10th of Tishrei, 40 days later. So he's now been up for 3 periods of 40 days. And in that time, Hashem forgives the Jewish people, and we have Yom Kippur from that as an everlasting time where we can get forgiveness. Now, we can obviously do tshuva any day of the week, 365 days a year. Yom Kippur is a day where Hashem guarantees that He will listen to us, as long as we do what we need to do. Moshe comes down with the second Luchos. We'll discuss a little bit more about the differences between the first and the second Luchos. And he comes down with the commandment to build a Mishkan. Whether the Mishkan was originally intended in Hashem's blueprint for the world, or whether the Mishkan was a result of the golden calf, that Hashem's presence could have lived directly with us, not through the Aron and the Mishkan, or whether Hashem needed to come through that form of building through those forms of sacrifice, is a machlokas in the Gemara. And it's a machlokas in the Rishonim, Rashi and Ramban, and various others have a dispute as to exactly when the Mishkan was given, and why the reasons for it. Be that as it may, we have a Mishkan. From that Mishkan, David HaMelech, 400, nearly 500 years later, wanted to build a temple for Hashem. He acquired the land of the site of the temple from the Yevusi, but he wasn't allowed to build a temple because Hashem said he had blood on his hands, and therefore he bought the land. He showed where it was going to be, but his son Shlomo, come back to what we started with, Shalom, Shlomo's name is all about peace, was the one who would build the temple on the site that King David bought. But we start building the Mishkan. So we're now, if we think about it in our terms, we are now at Yom Kippur. So we left Pesach, we received the Torah on Shavuot, 7 weeks later. 40 days later we had 17th of Tammuz. 40 days after that we have Rosh Chodesh Elul. 40 days after that we have Yom Kippur. We build the Mishkan, and the Mishkan is finished on the 25th of Kislev, Chanukah. Now Chanukah happened, 1,000 plus years after. Chanukah was in the middle period of the second temple, so we had just called round numbers, 400 years from going into Israel till the temple was built, 400 years till the destruction, 70 years exile. It's not quite 400, it's 420, 410. 7 years of exile, and then the second temple is built, and sometime into the second temple is the Hanukkah story. So we're talking 1,000 years or thereabouts after that, we rededicate the temple on the same day that the Mishkan is ready to be put up. The Mishkan was not put up on 25th of Kislev. It was packed away for a few months until the 1st of Nisan, when the Mishkan was actually finally put up, and the Nesiim, the leaders of the 12 tribes, brought their offerings from the 1st to 12th of Nisan, a year after we went out of Egypt, just before Pesach that year. The Mishkan is the tabernacle.
Oh, the tabernacle.
Apologies for not mentioning that. The Nesiim, the leaders of the tribes that brought offerings for the first 12 days of the month of Nisan, the second year out of Egypt, is the Parsha we read straight after Shavuos every year. Parsha's Naso is read not this coming Shabbos, the following Shabbos, always the week after Pesach, almost always. One of the reasons for that is that it is the longest individual Parsha, 176 verses, and therefore we've just accepted the Torah. Okay, now you've got a long Parsha this week. And sometimes, in Israel, they've got a few hours to learn the longest Parsha. And there are longer Parshas when we have double Parshas. Matos Masei is another 50 or so verses longer than that, even more than that. But as a standalone Parsha, Naso is the longest. And the length of Naso, and we'll please God learn about it next week, is mostly about the offerings of the 12 tribal leaders, the Nesiim, because they all brought the exact same things, and the Torah repeats it. The only differences is their names and their tribes. Other than that, it lists exactly what they brought, each one of them, to show they were all on the same level, etc. So we had 40-day period Moshe Rabbeinu on Mount Sinai from the 7th of Sivan to 17th of Tammuz, second from the 18th of Tammuz till the 29th of Av, third from the 1st of Elul, Rosh Chodesh Elul, till the 10th of Tishrei. 3 times Moshe's up there. He was up there to receive the Torah in the first Luchos the first time. He was praying and asking Hashem for appeasement in the second time, after the Chet HaEgel, the golden calf, and the third time, second Luchos, and then the absolute full forgiveness from Hashem with coming down on Yom Kippur. That's where are we at? Half an hour or so timeline of the whole process. Now, a few times I've mentioned the Luchos, the tablets. If you go back to your youth and you're sitting in shul and you're looking at the Aron Kodesh, there's a very good chance the Luchos were embroidered onto the Aron Kodesh. What did they look like?
A book that was out with the angels and
okay, and like tablets,
yeah.
like
yeah.
rounded tablets.
Yeah.
Okay, now if you look at most shuls today, you'll see square tablets.
Yeah. Square tablets.
Because the chances are those rounded tablets are not a Jewish source. They crept in artistically somewhere along the way. We can go back to a verse that it actually might relate to, and we'll come back to that. But let's just think about what these luchos were. So they were stone tablets, 2 separate stone tablets. The Gemara in Bava Basra says there were 6 tefachim by 6 tefachim by 3 tefachim. I'll describe what a tefach is now. A tefach is a fist, about 10 centimeters, 9 to 10 centimeters. So 50 centimeters, 54 centimeters, 60 centimeters maybe, by 60 and 30 wide. Okay? Not very big. But Moshe had to carry them. I'm just looking here. The size of a tefach varies significantly depending on which of the rabbis, even in modern times, describes it. I mean, just in terms of, it's between 48 and 60 centimeters. The biggest will be 60, the smallest 48. I just like to think about it as, that's the total size. I like to think of tefach as 10 centimeters. It's between, like, it's just a neat, easy way to remember it. You know, an amma is a meter kind of thing. It's just much easier in our times because we think metric. It's just easier to think about it. But, you know, about 60 centimeters tall, 60 centimeters wide, and about 30 centimeters thick. They were made, as I say, of a stone called sapphire. Let's call it sapphire. So I put into ChatGPT those dimensions. Here, I've got it here. I said, using the dimensions given in Bava Basra, on page 14a, each of the luchos was 6 by 6 by 3 tefachim. If you say a tefach is 9 centimeters, therefore they're 54 by 54 by 27. Tell me the volume of them and work out in the weight of sapphire, how much they would weigh. So, and I haven't checked this is ChatGPT, but it said this. Okay, if the material was sapphire, using the density of sapphire, or corundum, I assume that's its technical term, it would equal 3,980 kilograms per cubic meter. Okay, no, that's per cubic meter. It's much less than that. So the volume is roughly 0.0787 cubic meters. Nothing to do with aeroplane 787s. So that produced an estimated weight of approximately 313 kilograms each. 626 kilograms that Moshe was carrying. Now, a few caveats. The Midrashic sapphire that might not be sapphire. It could be a heavier stone. It could be a lighter stone. We don't know. The tefach might not be 9 centimeters. It might be less. It might be more. Also, it says that the writing was engraved onto the tablets. Now, there was a miracle. According to the simple explanation of the way it worked, I'm standing on one side, you're standing on the other. And you could look through certain letters like final mem, okay, or samach is better, it's a circle. A circle hovering in midair, you wouldn't know. It has to have a like a line, like a tube going through the middle of it to make it like a donut. That little line was suspended, but you could see the samach from your side, I could see it from my side. but we're writing right to left. It's not necessarily the middle letter in that line. It could be anywhere. The miracle was, I'm standing here, you're standing there. We could both read it and both see each other through it. But it gets better, because you're sitting there and you're sitting there, and you could also see through it. And if somebody was underneath and somebody was on top, they could also see through it in all 6 directions. Whichever way you look at the Luchos, you could. In other words, these were not physical, well, purely physical. They were stored in the Aron. The Aron is the place where Hashem's presence kisses the earth. Hashem's Shekhinah, his presence, is there. If Hashem's presence is there, that is the point where spirituality meets physicality. And therefore, these had to be something that will be beyond the physical. Even more so, if you look at the dimensions of the Holy of Holies, the Kodesh Kadoshim, in the Mishkan, in the tabernacle, in the temple, the way the measurements are written, you can't fit the Aron inside there. Because you learn it from one wall to one wall is a distance. The Aron doesn't fit between there, because you can measure it from the wall to Aron, from the wall to Aron. It's a spiritual thing in a physical existence. And that's the same thing with the Luchos. So they were beyond anything we can really understand. The picture we have on them on our Aron Kodesh, as I said, is square from the front. We obviously looking at it as one-dimensional or two-dimensional. These are obviously 3-dimensional stones. The first set were carved by Hashem himself from a spiritual to a physical. As I said, when Moshe came down, he was carrying these Luchos. The letters went out of them. Now, it's possible the letters were carved in, as I said, all these holes through them. Suddenly, the letters are gone. Moshe sees the letters flying up to heaven, and their weight must be replaced by the stone that needs to be there. In other words, they fill themselves up. Therefore, they're heavier in themselves. Plus, they've now lost that extreme spirituality. They become extremely heavy rocks. Moshe couldn't hold them. I think that picture that we have of Moshe throwing them down in anger is completely wrong. Moshe was the most humble person imaginable. He did not get angry like that with that. He was angry with the people, not with Hashem giving him the Luchos. And which is why Hashem then said, go down and carve for yourself a new set. All right, we're just beginning. So let's talk about what was written on them. So we have 2 sets of Aseres HaDibros. In Parshas Yisro, which is what we will read, please God, on Shavuos morning, we have the giving of the Torah and the listing of the Aseres HaDibros. On the first 5 of the Aseres HaDibros of the 10, I don't want to use the word commandments, it's translated as that, but Dibros is words, statements, expressions, things. A dever is a thing. They're not commandments because there are 613 commandments, not 10. These are not the big 10. However, saying that, there are many, many authorities that work out. The Vilna Gaon does it, others do it. Within the words and the letters of the Aseres HaDibros, all 613 mitzvahs can be learnt out. And so within that, now, there's concepts that says that even further than that, within the very first letter of the Aleph of Anochi, you can work out all 613 letters. Because the 613 mitzvahs, if you just think about the letter Aleph is essentially made of a Vav in the middle, a Yud and a Yud. A Yud and a Yud is 10, 20, and a Vav is 6, 26. 26 is the gematria of Hashem's name, Yud Kei Vav Kei, Yud Hei, and then a Vav and a Hei. So Hashem himself is in the Aleph, and therefore everything is in that. And so everything in Torah works like that. As we go deeper and deeper, we get to the first point, the beginning point of something. The first time you encounter something in the Torah is its source. And you can delve and delve. And the word Bereshis, in the beginning, there are hundreds of explanations of what that word means. And there's a lot of Torah we can explain of why did Hashem start the Torah with a base? He started Aseres HaDibros with an Aleph. When he came to give the Torah to the Jewish people, that's the Aleph of Hashem. That's the beginning point. Yes, we need all the background, and we need Sefer Bereshis Bereshis, because we need to know where we come from. We need to know those 26 generations that came before us, what they put in place for us. But then we come to get the Torah, and Hashem says, Anochi Hashem, I'm Hashem, your God who took you out of Egypt. That's where it all goes back to the beginning. All goes back to Hashem looked into Torah and created the world. So in the first set of Luchos was the Aseret HaDibros as written in Parshas Yisro. It says in the second set, which Moshe took up to Hashem, there were a few minor changes, Shamor and Zachor for Shabbos. When Hashem said the words, however this happens, because a human being can't speak like this, but Hashem said Shamor and Zachor, protect and remember the Shabbos as one word type of thing. He said the two words as one. We can't obviously speak like that. We don't understand how it's said. But Hashem said it like that. When Moshe wrote it in the second set, he wrote the other way. There were a few subtle changes between the Aseret HaDibros, but essentially they're the same. And the first 5 are all Ben Adam L'Makom, between man and Hashem. The second 5 are Ben Adam L'Adam, between man and man. Man and mankind. These are how we deal with each other. Many people ask the question, well, hang on, you got Kibbut Avayim, honor your father and your mother on the first side. Because one of the answers given is because in every child, any child who has parents, has 3 parents. Hashem, the mother, and the father. You need all 3 in order to make a child.
Oh, that's where
and you honor Hashem by honoring your parents. And so there's a direct connection to that. So yes, and that is really the straddle between moving from between man and God to between man and man. And on the left-hand side, between man and man. The first set of Luchos, Hashem said, put the Luchos into the Aron. The first set of Luchos, the broken pieces, Moshe gathered them all up. And they were also put into the Aron. So in other words, everything that Hashem said on Har Sinai is encapsulated in what's in the Aron. Everything, all the mitzvahs are really there. And on top of that, either inside the Aron itself or on just next to it was placed, on the last day of Moshe's life, he wrote a Sefer Torah. That Sefer Torah was put in the Aron, or with the Aron. He also wrote a Sefer Torah for every one of the tribes, all in the last day of his life, obviously, again, beyond natural, beyond what we can. Today a Sefer Torah will take a year or so to write. Moshe wrote 13 Sefer Torah in the last day of his life. As I said, they were engraved through the stone. You could see it on all sides. The difference between the first and the second, some of the words were different, and that Moshe carved the second, Hashem carved the first ones. So which ones were greater? Mm-hmm. So we can say, in a sense, the first were greater because they were purely spiritual from Hashem. They were miraculous. They came from that ultimate revelation, as we said at the beginning, when Moshe, all of the Jewish people heard the first 2 of the Aseret HaDibros from Hashem directly. It was a divine revelation. No other religion has ever been able to say, or will ever be able to say, that a whole nation saw Hashem. It says, those things that we normally hear, we saw, and those things we normally see, we heard. Our senses were so spiritually elevated that we saw the thunder, we heard the lightning. The whole of Mount Sinai, there was fire, there was lightning, there was noise, there was the sound of a shofar. It was an incredible pyrotechnic show, for want of a better term. Hashem's presence came down to the world. The whole world knew what was going on. The world was shaking. And everybody knew. So those were divine. However, the second set, in some sense, might have been even greater. Because they came about from us doing tshuva, from Moshe begging Hashem, from us saying to Hashem, we are actually in this with you. We've got a partnership with you. We want to accept your Torah. We want to do what you want us to do. And therefore, maybe, in some way, those are greater. What comes from us, what comes from internal, when we grow internally and get better and closer to Hashem, Hashem in many ways loves us at a much greater level than if we just grew up with it, so to speak. It says that there's a Baalei Tshuva stands in a place that somebody who was, I'm paraphrasing, complete this Gemara, but stands in a place where nobody who was, in our lingo, from birth can stand. However, we're all Balei Tshuva. Everybody in the world has to do Tshuva. Yom Kippur wouldn't be there if anybody was a pure tzaddik. There's several people, Gemara says, who died without sin. One of them is actually Yishai, King David's father. David Melech's father, Yishai, was one of those people who died without sin. Binyamin, one of David's sons, various people, I think it's 4 people. But most people, all people in the world, do some kind of sin. And we have Yom Kippur to grow with. And therefore, we're all Balei Tshuva. But somebody who's a Baal Tshuva from full on can stand in a place where even somebody who's learned and keeps Torah can't stand because they've changed their lives completely. That's the message, I think, in those second Luchos. That we can change, we can grow, we can get to a point where Hashem wants to just, so to speak, when Hashem doesn't have an arm, but put his arm around us and tell us how much he loves us. We just need to take the first step and say to Hashem, we love you. And that's really a message of what Shavuos is about. I just want to go back to where the source of this heart shape comes from, because we didn't mention and we can clarify. So there's a verse that says that you should carve it onto the luach libecha, the tablet of your heart. And if you think about the rounded shape, it's like a tablet of the heart. It's like the heart, the two together is like a bit of a heart shape on top. A tablet was a square writing writing board. That's what they wrote on. And this happened to be a stone tablet. But that's what they wrote on. So by saying, there's a bit of a drush, we can extend it and say, a tablet of your heart. Your heart's got 2 rounded tops. Therefore, the luchos look like that. But there's no rabbinic source for that whatsoever. It's a much later thing. That's a verse from the book of Proverbs, from the book of Mishlei. Those words are used. So there's no real source for them being rounded. There's a source of them straight, square, the way we should be. Perfectly straight and clear and simple, and just focus on doing what does Hashem want of me. That's our goal. Our goal in life should be, okay, what does Hashem want of me? Does Hashem want me, I'm talking to me now, to spend the night learning Torah, when in the morning I might be absolutely exhausted, and then the most important part of Shavuos is accepting the Torah. When we're reading in the Leiling, I may well be asleep at that point in time. Shavuos was not designed for the southern hemisphere. Think about the northern hemisphere right now, in Israel. You can go further north, and go to northern Europe, in Canada, in places now. Yom Tov starts at 10 o'clock at night. You're eating your meal at 11 o'clock at night. Sunrise is at 4:30. So you're going to learn for 2 or 3 hours. You'll daven at 4:30, long davening till 7:30. 7. You're back in bed at 7. You wake up at 3 o'clock and 4 o'clock and you daven mincha and you have lunch and you're all fine. Here, Yom Tov comes in at 4:56, I think it is. So you're eating your meal at 6:30. You wait a little bit. You can't make Kiddush on Yom Tov before, especially Shavuos. You've got to have counted 49 full days. And so Kiddush can only be made after nightfall. So we make Kiddush at 6:30, at 6 o'clock I think is now, just before 6. We make Kiddush at 6:30 and we eat. And we have a very long 3-hour meal. It is a long meal. And we go back to Shul at 9 o'clock. And we learn through the night. And the night's minyan starts at 6:30, 6:40. So now we've gone for 12 hours pretty much through a night. When it's cold, chances are it's probably wet. And then we're going to come to Shul. I know of somebody many years ago who decided to learn through the night. He wasn't used to it. And he learned through the night. And he came home in the morning. He was a bit tired and he fell asleep. And he woke up the next morning. He missed the entire day and the entire night. And based on that, a lot of the rabbis in town say, unless you're used to it, don't do it. But what should you do? Accept the Torah. Try and be in Shul to accept the Torah on first day Yom Tov. If you say Yizkor, try and be in Shul on second day Yizkor. And remember on Yizkor to fulfill the pledge that you took when you said Yizkor prayers. The neshamas know that we're saying Yizkor for them. And they wait and wait for us to fulfill the pledge. And so we should do that. And we should just focus on trying that much better, as we started with, that the Torah is given in Har Sinai. In Midbar Sinai is B'Shalom. Torah is given B'Shalom. If we focus on being B'Shalom, on being at peace, at being connected, at being Achim, at being brothers in the general sense, all Jewish people, Kol Yisrael Arevim Zeh Lezeh, we're all guarantors for each other. We're all brothers and sisters of each other. And if we know that and we do that, then there won't be extensions of the war this week. There won't be a need for it. Because then Hashem will send Mashiach before Yom Tov, and we can go to Shavuos, and we can go to the Beis HaMikdash, and we can do exactly what we're supposed to do. That everybody should have their shidduch at the right time, and everybody should be in peace, and everybody should know that Hashem gave us the Torah 3,500 years ago. And every single year on Shavuos, Hashem re-gives us the Torah. It's up to us to accept it.